Hello and welcome here, everyone. We're excited to get underway with some more IEN action here with Esports Indiana, and I'm excited because we're going to a little bit slower paced game, yet so thrilling in chess. We have an amazing matchup for you here today between the Kankakee Valley High School and LaVille High School, two players that are currently 3-0 in their records. My name is Orbital. With me is Cherry J, and we will be your casters for this series. Cherry, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. We got some chess on the action. You said slower pace, but I gotta disagree. I believe this format is going to be that 10 minutes. Certainly something that requires that high-paced thinking, requiring quick thought processes that are going to result in swift action for both players. I really do look towards that kind of momentum being built within the early game as something they're going to want to look towards, as two teams that are 3-0, two players that are 3-0, sorry, certainly does give off the impression to me that they have that experience behind their belt. They've played in tournaments before. They know what they're doing, and I just want to see what they do have in store for us here tonight.
I hope they have a lot. Before we get underway with the matchup, though, we want to give a big shout out to one of our three sponsors that you'll hear about a little bit later, Zotac. Zotac, of course, is amazing in making sure that we can give you an awesome broadcast throughout the entirety. And not only that, supporting Scholastic Esports in Indiana. If you want to go ahead and show your appreciation for Zotac Gaming, you can go ahead and give them a shout out on social media. Make sure to join their Discord as well. And don't forget to use hashtag powered by Zotac or hashtag ZotacUSA when you post any of the cool moments, like if you see an unexpected checkmate or check coming in to play here tonight. Let's go ahead and dive into the match because I'm pretty sure both players are actively ready. I do believe we have a BO3 ready for you, and players will be having to swap between the black and white pieces as we go along. Cherry J, I am excited to get underway with this one, as this should be a treat and a half. It does look like, if I can double check this, I believe Kankakee is over there on black to start, and we got Caden, who is coming in for LaVille High School on the white, starting out here.
It kind of makes me wonder how that game 3 will be decided on the colored pieces, as I don't know. Do they take a 50-50, flip a coin? That's kind of the question I'm wondering, as the white certainly does get a bit of a heavy advantage taking the first move. But there is always going to be that chance. When you're playing the white, not only do you get a bit of extra tempo compared to your opponent, but besides that, you're also going to get a huge advantage in terms of being able to gather that kind of pace that you want to play at. You get to the choice of how you're going to open up the center, and it does seem that we are going to be getting this white side taking this knight opening on the king's side, followed up by the black rocking with the same option. Neither team wanting to commit until e4 does get picked up, as I like it a lot, as it kind of gives you that kind of closed off mid game, not going to be playing too aggressively, while something like d4 or even c4 can kind of really change up the pace of this game.
I mean, so far, starting out with what I believe is lovingly known as the Zuka turret opening. It's a little bit silly with the Knights. I personally used to play it, but granted, I didn't develop my pieces as well as I probably should have. So, you take that for what you will. Both Knights currently opened up by the side of Kankakee. They're trying to run a little bit more, but now bringing out their own bishop as well, moving it into attack row, leaving the spacing open. Castling completed, allowing a G1 pace for Caden, tucking their king away and maybe enabling that rook to pop out and defend on the E4 space.
It certainly is interesting running that 4-knight opening, something you don't traditionally see. It can be very volatile if you don't understand the moves in order to be able to come out of this early game with all your pieces intact and finding an equalized position. It does seem like both players, however, playing it very solid, not going to go too overextending for an aggressive stance, as we do just see the move of H6 being attacked, which I don't love, because the idea of white to move their bishop over to g5 wasn't really an option that it did seem like they were going to opt towards, but it does seem like they're just kind of playing for moves. They're not really going to go for much. I kind of enjoy the idea of bishop to d7. However, I think that overall, neither player being a little bit too aggressive is just kind of a result of this being such a pivotal game for both players. They want to keep up the kind of momentum they've gained throughout the season. A 3-0 record, certainly a stand towards as a dominant opening to your 2025-2026 school year.
I think it's impressive as well, considering you take a look at Kenkaki's player, they're sitting at 1,000 rating right now. And granted, rating isn't everything when it comes to a lot of these matches, depending on how you play, depending on what format you do play. I love that you pointed out they were playing the 10-minute format instead, and yet both these players seem like they could be on a speed chest. Instead, they're making moves at a blistering pace, both sitting still well over that 8.5-minute mark. We're already 9 moves deep on either side, as it's a heavy push in on the D4 column, and we're looking at that pacing of that pawn just forcing a volatile exchange. You can see it's currently pieced together, and it is going to be a take of the pawn with knight. And I'm surprised because now it's going to lead to possibly even more concussive blows with a 3-way look into that position, maybe mobilizing that queen that has been sitting on the back row for white.
The idea for Caden here is to try and trade out as much as possible to get your queen out onto d4. What the follow-up is going to be from there, I'd imagine you're possibly going to be looking towards taking the knight on f6, but it does seem as if we look towards person to really just enact completely onto this idea that has been set up into them. I don't like this. I think that currently white is standing at a massive advantage regarding 4 pieces already brought out compared to person who's at a little bit of a disadvantage regarding how their pieces have been set up. They move towards f4. An interesting move to say the least. You don't traditionally see this as an option most players will opt in for, but it certainly has been seen very pivotal at the high level of chess, as it has so much theory behind it. The f square, the most difficult to defend in the game of chess, and pushing it out to f4 really does raise some question marks in my head. However, it also not only does that, but for the white squares, it'll give them a massive stranglehold over the center for the next couple moves.
That is if they can get aggressive and actually start setting up their next engagement. You saw what they were going for in about that mid-game position where we saw the exchange of the bishop and the knights. Main thing now is you're actually backing away. It feels like for person, you've gotten a little bit of a chance to maybe back Caden back a little bit more on the board. If you can set up a nice exchange here, maybe even looking at that e4 pawn if you want to get silly, or just making sure that e file is gonna be under control. Bring out the bishop that had been sitting out on the backboard, now covering in to attack that c4 bishop as well. I like that person just trying to go a little bit more aggressive in this stance, and it's a frontal assault as the bishops face down 1 square away from each other. I like it.
I'm a little bit confused on the idea behind that, because I'd imagine if you take with the knight here, certainly it's going to put a bit of pressure onto your bishop if you are black. However, it's still, despite that, is going to be a bishop for a knight trade. Once we get towards this later endgame, where the pawns aren't nearly as concussed into each other, you imagine that trading that bishop for the knight is going to be unfavorable if you are Caden on these white squares. I don't know, though. I mean, the rook to b8, it makes a lot of sense. Falling, oh, that's bad. That's looking really good. That's looking really, really good for white now.
That just locked up the entirety of the midboard right there. That was so. Originally, what I saw was a d5 three-way pinch like we saw earlier from white. You could go bishop to pawn to knight to queen, and you'd still come out in a piece exchange, right? Now you just screwed that bishop. That bishop is in so much trouble right now for person who was just like, dude, I had to back away or risk a minus piece take here. This is rough right now, and Caden, huge props for this game so far.
I think if you are playing in the black squares, you have to take. Yep. There it is. Do you take with the knight, though? That's what I'm kind of wondering, and I don't know whether or not the answer is yes. Obviously, you can move the queen back to d8, but I don't know if that's going to be the option you're going to want to go for. They opted not to, instead trying to go for a bit of an aggressive stance, taking it out, but now your queen is so highly inputted for white that now you have a stranglehold over the square onto b7. You have a bit of a damage towards d6 to ruin the mid game for person. And at this point, I look towards white. The only things that they really haven't been able to do too much this game is take the rooks out. I think rook a to d1 might be the best option for white next move, no matter what, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, you start attacking a little bit more. This is a gameplay that, surprisingly enough, we've actually locked out all the knights and all the bishops, which is, may cause a little bit of confusion, but the positioning of where everyone is at is huge. And now you can almost see persons start to recognize that, okay, we've actually just obliterated a majority share of the field. Now I look at trying to take a little bit more. Pawn comes out C2 to C3, just making sure to cover with your B2 pawn. As you said, though, all of the rooks are still on the back line. You're still trying to wait for that breakaway moment. And now person is taking a lot longer. 4 minutes difference between the two players.
Oh, okay. They're going to look to try and get an exchange
Oh.
between the queens. I think that's a little bit good if you are black, as they are going to look to go for that stalemate. If you are playing black, finding a stalemate is a lot better than being white and finding a stalemate, as you get a bit of an advantage. Next game, you're going to move over to the white pieces, get your own way of playing the game, as you can choose between any type of opening that you want to try and align yourself with. There is going to be rook f2 d1. An interesting move. I personally would have gone with rook a to d1, as I think that these squares towards the right side of the board are going to be a lot more impactful rather than the ones towards the other side. However, it does seem as if black is just going to match them, trying to kind of keep possession over the mid game.
And at this point, you also have to start activating your king, which you saw Caden basically say, okay, I gotta start activating this king. I gotta start using it as a secondary buffer, using it to kind of cover some of your extra pieces, making sure there's an additional threat range, which, especially when it comes down to just rooks, kings, and pawns, your pawns are going to get locked very, very quickly. If you don't activate the king early, I feel like, and you allow those pawns to just kind of get out of control, there's a chance you don't really have a good angle in to actually take a lot of pieces without sacrificing more. And it feels like this advantage that we saw Caden have earlier, even though the positioning is good, piece-wise, we're looking at a pretty neutral state. I believe only a pawn lost between all of them, if I'm reading this correctly. So it's actually fairly even. It's all about board state and board possession, which is why the king is coming out right now.
Is it crazy to say that I want to see the move c4 from black? I think that would be crazy good, as it completely locks the white king out of any good advantageous positions. But even now, the pawn on e5 completely taking the king of Caden out of any kind of aggressive stances to move towards the center, try and find their way into the backlines of their opponent. I don't know how this game's going to get open up. I think that white may perchance play b4, as that would give them the most opportunity to be able to find a win. But if your response is c4 from black, that kind of just puts you in even more detrimental position. So I kind of look towards a lot of moves as it could work, but it is a double-edged sword. But I don't know. You have any ideas?
No, not really. This is the point where I think when we looked at how Caden played, you were so focused on the early mid exchanges that you forgot what happens when the board is kind of spaced out. And both players are actively sitting here going, oh, like things went a little bit sideways, right? Like I think for Caden, you sat there, and I like this move, pawn to b4. You go ahead, push up, you kind of say, okay, I recognize that c4 position could be huge, but I need to attack in another way. Now, as you said, though, for black, you could still lock up this center board. You could really force this d file to be the only option for what I feel like is either player right now. Keep in mind, though, for white, for Caden, you still have the G and H pawns to still move up and look for some sort of move here, some sort of attack. There's that move, though, Cherry. You called it almost perfectly, and it is going to be set up in a nice little stranglehold. No pawn movement on B or C.
But we still haven't really discussed this. We look towards the time as a major issue for person. 3 minutes 45 is all they're remaining. On the opposite side, 750. Certainly seeming as if person is going to have to start biding their time, or not biding their time nearly as much if they want to be able to find a win here. The move h5 gets picked up. That's going to allow the en passant to be capitalized upon significantly if you are white, as you will be able to take from the h file up towards g6 if your opponent does play the move g5. I don't know if that's even something that person was considering, but if that is, that really could give Caden a massive advantage coming into this game.
Now we sit and wonder. That time bank, once again, Sherry, we are watching those minutes roll down. You have to recognize that you really, really don't want to sit in that 1 minute loss, one of those periods, and you recognize that those. Yeah, okay. I like that. You go ahead and just kind of protect your rook. You recognize things are going sideways. I like this one, though. D1 to D5 rook. You start attacking those pawns a little bit more. You're going to break pace. You're going to try and get something. There's going to be the rook exchange, and it's going to be a rook out on either end. That pawn, that D5 pawn from E4 is starting to get a lot of action here.
I think realistically we'll be seeing king to d6 as they're going to look to try and make their way around, possibly get their pawn over on the a file up to a5, cause a little bit of influence on that side of the board. Not sure if that's something that they're thinking of, though. There is certainly a lot of options for both sides. We're still in an equalized game as neither team has been able to find succession, but there is going to be d6 picked up.
Yep.
White's going to respond e4. Both players looking towards the mid. However, we look towards Caden as the one who's being so dominant towards the mid game with their king, as Black's going to have to start playing for the side lanes and trying to contest in that option rather than taking advantage of mid. And we will see that from them as they are going to be taking away their rook from doubling up with the king, instead opting in towards the a file, looking to possibly push up a5 next turn, force a trade on the b4 square, and just kind of take a little bit of a tear over towards that side of the board.
And I wonder if you start activating that G2 pawn, right? Like for, oh. Okay, because you covered, you can now move into range, which I don't disagree with, on the E file, but there's that attack on the A that you were talking about. So this is going to be a big push, moving that rook to cover the back line here, which I kind of like as well. Maybe you're saying, okay, I'm going to start covering some of those 3-row pawns in case there's another move that is going to be made. Namely, though, I want to see that G2 pawn activated. I want to see Caden say, okay, if you're playing all the pawns, I need to as well, because currently the pacing is going to lend itself to person just kind of making fast movements. You got to recognize that the moves are going to come out lightning fast. And for Caden, you can take a little bit of time. You still have 7.5 minutes on your time bank, but this is going to get messy here very, very quickly.
I think Caden might have blundered with this e3 move, because now you're going to take on a4. The response either has to be taking on a3, which will allow your opponent to get their rook into the backline. That's going to be the case. Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, never mind. It was rook to g3, which was the idea from Caden, and going to try and trade out pawns on either side. Instead, we're going to see person completely calling that out, going to bring their rook up down to a7, and now both players are in a standstill once more. I do still a little bit more for person as they have that open no pawns exchanged in the a file, as that's going to give them a little bit of chances to get into their opponent backline, and maybe you're going to try and swing your king around towards f7 or maybe f8 and just be able to protect that pawn. Then you will be able to move your rook down to a2, and that could possibly cause a little bit of a swirling position, as both kings will be completely moving around the board, but they're going to opt for it instantaneously, going down to a2 immediately. And now the question is, how do you respond? Do you go rook to g1? Do you go king to f3? Do you push the pawn up? You have a couple options if you're white here, but there is going to be the option to push up, and that does seem to be the one they will opt for. What I don't like, however, is now you do have the pause. Oh, never mind. I was thinking rook g2 is going to be something, but then king just responds with f3. So I don't know, Orbital. It really could go either way at this point, but there's a free pawn for black.
Yeah, this is actually becoming a little bit dangerous because it also breaks the stalemate over on that C to A side. You're looking at this position, and actually Caden's a beat behind. I do agree that there is what felt like a blunder earlier. You kind of called it out, the idea that there might have been a blunder situation. I think you're just now a beat behind. Caden has always been on the forefront so far, and I have a good feeling Caden is going to start using this time bank that you're currently set at alongside a file, forcing a possible check. It's a great call out. You say if you're going to attack, you're going to attack. And for person on the other side, for Kankakee, you're like, oh dang, do I take the pawn or do I try and maneuver away? This is going to break that monotony, break that stalemate that's been in the middle of this board for so dang long. You have to recognize that in about 2 moves or 1 move, you're going to have to move that king whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I think you move the king here. You can't take the pawn, because if you take the pawn, rook to a7 is going to be picked up, and after that, I'm not sure how you're going to be able to defend that. Oh, never mind. They opt in for 6 first, And now there's actually a way to defend it. If you go rook to, or king to e7, sorry, that's going to be forcing another check from white onto a7, and then they can't take the pawn anymore. Because of the fact that you've had that extra boost of tempo, it gives you the option to play onto f8, and now they're going to get exactly what they were looking for.
So much space to be played. Are they just going to run the timer out? No, they go ahead and body block this time around. Maybe a move behind, but it's not the worst in the world. Now we get to see, yep, there it is, that rook in, and it's a chance. You go ahead and push it up to cover. And I don't know. This is going to be chancy. Again, we recognize that if you go ahead and queen up on that position, it's going to be taken right away. So do you exchange out? Do you lose? No, you block in between. It's a whole exchange. Is this? I wonder how this is going to pan out. There's only 20 seconds left for person to hang on to.
I mean, there is that 2-second delay that we have recently come into contact with. I actually just realized that. I didn't realize there was on a delay. But that is still going to give person a little bit of time to be able to build back this time bank. Whether or not they will be inevitably able to find that, I'm not sure. But this pawn, it's going to be taken no matter what, I think. I mean, I don't see a world where white's going to be able to find another defender to be able to pick up on this. But okay, this is good. White's going to try and just get a little bit of value from their kind of desolate situation, taking another pawn. But now they might, yeah, they blundered, because now there's no defender. You couldn't push that up. What you needed to do is run rook to c7 before pushing that, as that would have allowed you to make something happen. Maybe they do actually. They might have something here, as they're going to take a check, take another check, and now this rook is marching down with the pawn in hand.
Oh, this is a push and a half right now. Person is 100% recognizing that this is going to be such a dire straight, and it's going to be difficult to counter right now. It's all about who has the extra beat. The king is now invading into enemy territory. They are on the front lines, and you can see the C and D position as now it's a race on the other side. Oh, who is going to break first? Both have a good idea. Both have a good plan to move, and they make their mark up. The king is body blocked from working to this three-way attack. What a wild stance here, as I think it's a pawn exchange on this left side. Yeah, it has to be. My God, a piece up is person, but down in time they are.
And not even a piece. I mean, it's a single pawn. It means very little. There's 8 on the board.
I mean, you say that, Cherry, but that's what they've been fighting over the whole time, it feels like.
Well, yeah, I don't know. It's just so desperate if you're on this person's, like, kind of coaching staff, as now you're down to 6 seconds. And you need to make something happen, but this might have just cost them the game. If white trades, if they don't trade, white trades there, they're able to push their king up to d5 and just march around. Oh? Instead, we go even longer, as white and black both contesting. What's the play? If you're white, it seems like you're fine with just building out the time, as you're going to be able to win almost no matter what, as long as you can stall it out.
There it is.
Black wants to win.
Very, very nice break, though. So this is going to be that exchange. A little bit of movement coming in here. And now you sacrifice because you had the pawn advantage, and it's the king only. The king stands alone with 2 lowly squires in tow. And I don't think it's going to be helpful at all. Right now, you push the time make up for 2, though, and you take the rest of the board. And now comes the pawn exchange. You're going to look for a stalemate, though. There is a chance for a stalemate. Well, we say that, but it's a tuck into the corner. So Caden just has to play this nigh perfectly to get the victory. It's a little bit of a tuck. You have the 3-pawn exchange, and maybe you can look to sneak that king out to the edge.
I don't like how fast Caden was being, but it does seem like they will slow down. And yeah, now you are.
Yep, the blunder.
That's tragic. Oh, that's tragic. I thought they had it, because I was like thinking, yep, they're just gonna have to push that king, and then I saw the move come in, but I didn't realize it's the pawn. And, that's tragic. Oh, my God. Well, that is going to be game 1. Unfortunately, that is Caden going to be losing out on the bit of advantage they had in white. But who knows? Maybe they're in favor of the black pieces. I know a couple people that personally do appreciate them a little bit more. So allows for openings like the Scandinavian to go in their favor. But we'll see whether or not they have much more to show us. Caden going to be swapping over as the black pieces. They are going to be running almost the same opening as before. We're seeing an interesting idea from person who's going to be opening with c4. a uncommon opening that you see traditionally at the high school collegiate level. Traditionally, you're going to be looking more towards those D4s, those E4s, but a C4 certainly has a lot of theory behind it.
I think it's just, again, they're very comfortable in their openings. We talk a lot about how you play openings and how you play in chess. One of the big things is recognizing which, I would say which opening you prefer, right? There are a lot of players, especially in the mid game, that yes, you have to respond at high levels, but as you said, when it comes to this college level, this is a whole difference though, as we completely open up the middle files as we see an immediate check look, and we might be looking at a queen's toss on either end. But this is person taking that gambit. Is it a queen exchange? It is. And now it's a push on, and Kaden is going for fire pretty much off bat. Two-way exchange that has to be answered here. What is this difference here? This is blatantly different than game one.
You're forced to take almost, as if not, you're going to be hit by the fork onto C2, as yep, there's going to be the trades of the knights, as we will be seeing the bishop for the Caden locked on to the D file, but with a pawn advantage, certainly looking different than what we saw in the last game. Not by a large margin, however, certainly a margin to begin with. As the castle does come through, you'd imagine that both person is going to try and exchange in doing a castle of their own, almost guaranteed to run the king's side. The queen's side castle, very unlikely, as it has a little bit less fortification behind it, only castling one square rather than the two that you get on in if you go towards that king's side. Now the response is going to be C6, looking to cut off the edges for this knight to run off to.
And here's a big deal again. One of the crazier exchanges that we saw there, I think, is that queen, because we know both players do like exchanging pieces. At least Caden loves to go for exchanges. The fact that we saw such a blatant push to open and then scatter the rest of the board, I'm interested to see how person is actually able to work this out. And there it is. I was wondering about it. When the board gets a little bit haphazard, you tend to overlook some positions. Nice pawn take. You can now move that bishop back, maybe into an A3 position. But no, you force to push even further in, and you take an exchange of more. Right now, person is down 2 pawns. And you leave open a bit of space in the mid, and you also enable person to have a B file push with an open rook. Barely any movement needed there. So, interesting exchanges overall. Now activating the other rook.
Oh, if there might possibly be an interesting play coming on if black does inevitably opt in for a D5 push. Not sure if that's something that Caleb is looking towards as a real option to go towards, but if so, it could be a little bit pivotal. But as we kind of see, I think one of the main reasons we're seeing person in a bit of a detrimental situation comparatively to what happened last game is due to the fact that they haven't been necessarily moving up their time bank nearly as much. As eating it up is nice. We actually do see an interesting play as person is able to win out a pawn in this current situation. If they take onto the C6 C6 square, sorry, that will force the take from B7, and if that does never occur, it will be a rook to be taken on B8. So we'll see whether or not that is going to be the case, whether or not they'll see that as an option. Instead, going to be moving up towards E3. And maybe the idea here is we want to try and just get a little bit of pressure on, but now the idea that they recently had is going to be lackluster if the rook moves back to A8. Instead, they push up.
So this is the other exchange piece that you were talking about, and an opportunity currently being abound as now. I feel like Caden kind of understood what you were talking about there, Cherry, saying, hey, look, that exchange could lead to a piece loss. And I will say, Caden has been much more aware of piece exchanges than I think person has the entire time in multiple games. Now, how often you fall for piece exchanges is a whole different story, as we do see coverage coming abound, possibility of a free pawn or a pawn exchange on either end, as both players are looking to invade an enemy territory right now. The C4 pawn currently being aggressed on, the D6 pawn can be taken for free, but might be put in a little bit of a difficult situation. That entire E-file, though, was a little bit wicked to watch for, as we do see that broken with one of the 4 bishops that have lined up on that rank. It is a D5 move, looking for an exchange once again.
Do they take? I think taking would be interesting. You get the pawn off of the F7 file. However, that opens up your opponent's rook to be able to follow it up with something like bishop to D4. which really could be putting a bit of a desperate situation, as you could get an IQP online. If you're able to do that, it could be really, really rough if you're on the white squares. However, with 2 rooks enabled, a IQP probably isn't the biggest thing to worry about. And it is just going to be b6 to be played. It seems as if Caleb is just looking towards making a bit of a closed up left side of the board, as they don't want to try and make any big plays. However, Person going to try and explode it right on back up as they make a interesting, demanding move towards a4 to try and push a5 potentially.
Now we're just kind of stuck in this. I feel like Caden is sitting there going, all right, well, I'm here right now. What do I do? Like, you gotta keep that rook over there on B file. You gotta hang on to it on that top side. You could try and maneuver some of those pawns on the other, or activate your bishops, but all the bishops seem to be in a little bit of a struggle bus situation. So do you wish to move on out? You actually back up and start attacking that a4 position, which also saves your bishop from being exchanged out. I don't disagree with this. I kind of like this call.
I mean, yeah, it's really good, as how do you defend it? You can't if you're white, sorry. If you're white, your only options are b4 with a rook or a1 with a rook. Either one will be taken, and they are going to opt in for a1. And yep, instantly it will be taken offline. That brings a little bit of a rough situation, to say the least, as now white not only down the pawns, also going to be down material.
Not only that, threaten to lock. I feel like if you are Person right now, if you're the Kankakee player, you are actually looking to break open and create a little bit of space. Yeah, so what I was looking at is a little bit of worry of having that king locked up. That's an easy check if you misplay. So you need to create a little bit more air to work with. And now with that Peaks exchange, a +4 right now for Caden, you can look for another bishop exchange. The threat onto the a4 pawn has worked wonderfully. You can now look to aggress out. You start forcing positions away, and it's a free pawn exchange right there. Not only that, it's a double bishop look, as the bishop is going to be taken as well, and this is devastating because Caden can now activate the last rook if you want to put a double rook on E file. Things are starting to close up much better in this game number 2, as Caden is going strong in the fight.
I mean, at this point, I don't even say this as a joke, but you could trade the rook for the bishop, and I think you'd be fine. If you're playing on the black squares, you're looking to just limit any possibilities that white has to come back on into this game. And right now, Person, yes, there's not many, but both this bishop and this rook with a good move can become extremely potent. So certainly something that you can look towards if you are on the black side. Just trading down material as much as possible, as up a whole rook, certainly making this game look unbearable.
I'm very, very impressed with what Caden did. Last time we saw the exchanges go down to almost a net 0. This currently sitting at a +8. And now we're going to see that punch. Yeah, you have to. You don't have any other choice. And all of a sudden, not willing to lose the rook, which I understand at this time. Still a little bit surprising, though, as now you can go ahead and push in that rook all the way to the back if you wish. But you don't want to expose your forces. You're hanging on to your pawn. And you're saying, good, I am in a safe location right now. I'm going to start moving my pawns up. Maybe look at another piece exchange if you want to somewhere. You could start looking to aggress a little bit with that rook movement, though. I want to see that. I want to see Person's king threatened right now. I feel leaving it comfortably at G1 is just a little bit too nice.
And definitely not looking good. However, we will be seeing the position getting a little bit more volatile as the pawn marching down the D file. The rook standing in the path of the king on the opposite side, making it almost impossible for them to be able to get any real information in anything, honestly. Bishop moving down, a c7 picked up. They're just wasting moves, and they want to try and get this back up. It is going to be bishop to E or df4, and yeah, there's the rook coming on down.
I mean, this is... At this point, I would sit there and say there's not much you can do. As much as I hate to say this, if you are white, if you are Kankakee, you're kind of lost right now. There's not much you can do. You're about to either lose your bishop or give your opponent an extra exchange. You choose to lose your bishop. It is going to be a rough time, and it's going to be the force on in. Welcome to the other side of the game as another pawn is there. And let's make sure this time for Caden that you don't allow this problematic point. You are going to gift over 2 extra, but you have your queen in play, and now you're going to bottleneck with the 3 pawns on the other end. The queen movement is there. And moving it into f4. Poor king has to back away. You walk it on down, and Cherry Caden, a massive master of the game this time, takes a very comfortable position in game 2. Is looking to go up 1.5 to 0.5 here in this series.
Yeah, I mean, we can't count them out yet. If we were
that is fair. That is fair.
That would have been insane if they didn't have that pawn and that just happened. But there is going to be the checkmate coming through. Almost a tie. Almost, if it wasn't for that sneaky pawn on a4. But yeah, there was close. It was close. But that is going to be game number 2. It's going to be Caden up 1.5 on the verge of winning. All you can ask for if you're a person now is going to be a tie. And whether or not that happens will be a TBD. Same setup, or similar setup, actually. Instead of going to be the English, it's going to be the Sicilian. So instead of playing white to c4, they're going to be playing white to e4 and then responding with c4 or c5 in its stead. And I like it a lot more conventional as an opening. I mean, personally, I'm not the biggest fan, as I play against it a lot. My dad plays it, and I hate it. I'm very bad at playing into it. But yeah.
I like how you just like, I hate this. Like, why are we doing this? I don't want to see it. It's a bittersweet moment. It's real though. And again, we get to see this position where the mid is currently populated by the 4 knights, and now it's an exchange out though. So a much riskier gambit here, I think, because you open up that king file once again. So I feel like Kanan is starting to recognize that, hey, if I can start putting down early pressure into this game, it actually allows me to get a foothold over, because person is so focused on defending their backline. It's such an interesting place to play. The king's face down across the battlefield. There's going to be that exchange over. And look, now you can't have that favorability. It is going to be a change of pawn to knight. But again, that space is being taken, and person always has to be a little bit worried about that. Ooh.
Okay, I think that's an interesting idea coming in for the white side, as usually, we're seeing a lot of pre-moves coming out. Looks like both players have just that intuition of, yep, they're going to play this, don't matter, we're making the move. And yep, both queens going to be in the center of the board at this point. Black moving out, d6 going to be played for the bishop, as there's the check coming through. The options are limited, as bishop to e7 is going to be your really only viable option. Maybe you want to try and lose the pawn and take e4 as your option for the knight, but yep, they're going to move it back. Bishop e7, having the queen protecting it, as well as options for the castle to come through. It leaves black with a very defensive
I like this.
Portion.
I like this. I saw this a little bit. G5 bishop now puts an aggression down onto the knight, which opens up space. Either you lose the knight and go into a piece exchange. Granted, it's not amazing, but the thought is you open up that 3-pawn row over there and you try and make a little bit more space. Now, is it going to be perfect? Absolutely not. However, if you do move that knight, you are going to leave that G7 pawn. It's a very blatant attempt at a piece grab, I will say, coming out from Caden, but I don't think it's a terrible one in the current exchange. Not only that, you open up the rest of your rooks to play. So if you wish, you can get a bit messy with it right now. Nice castle over on the other side. Person making sure to stay free from that possible king move and locking one of your rooks up.
Alrighty, we take a bit of a gander back on over, as more moves will be incoming, with the bishop eliminating each other, taking hands for hands, as now it's going to be the queens in the center. Will they trade? Put the knight on d5. Opting in for it certainly would be an interesting idea, but it does seem like it will be the case, as the bishop on the b file now will be traded in for a pawn, as now the rook contesting it, going to have the ability to take that pawn over on b7. So it is a bit of a double-edged sword taking on b2 if you are black, but I personally do favor white in that trade, is now with the rook onto the 7 file, it gives them the chance to eat away at all these pawns, creating pressure every which way.
I mean, Sherry, this is a piece of work right now. Look how dead this middle field is. It's so chaotic. That's going to be a pawn move up the A file, and let's see if it works out in their favor.
Certainly seeming as if it could, but we just kind of make a little bit of a trip as, I don't know. All right, like, it makes a lot of sense putting the king on F1. You want to get your rook out ASAP. However, I don't know if that was the best option they could have done there. I kind of like the idea of moving up C4 as it is isolated. No pawns on either side of it for black is going to mean that they're going to have to heavily invest to try and take it offline. But now you have a little bit of protection for your king. It certainly isn't a bad idea. I don't know. And, I don't know. A5 is odd. I think A5 works, but if your response is 4 for white, then you're going to be in a pretty locked up position where then your rook gets the option of playing B5 if you're on the white side, and it gives you just that kind of forceful entrance if you're on the black side as well, where you're kind of needing to defend that pawn, or else both pawns on the white side on this left side of the board are going to be isolated completely, and there's no real way to stop them.
We finally get a moment to breathe. As Person says, this is the fewest pawns we've had with the most amount of backline units around. We have 2 rooks and a bishop versus 2 rooks and a knight. A little bit more mobility on the end of Caden with that knight in case things get messy on the F through H files. Bishop still wanting to make some sort of action, but this is by far one of the more complicated mid to end games that these two have played thus far. A rook offered and a rook possibly taken, but of course you might just look to save yourself in that exchange. So it's an offering from Person to see if they can clear out some more pieces.
I kind of look rook E to E7. I mean,
Oh, that'd be so you're just trying to cover on that end, essentially.
well,
hang
not even
on
just
to an
cover,
extra
because
rook.
it also mounts an attack as you'd be able to put a bit of pressure onto F7,
Oh,
but
that's fair.
instead they're just going to take, and then the bishop's going to find their trade from the D4 over to the A7 now. Ooh, I don't even know who I'd say is winning here, because white certainly has a bit of an advantage in material. However, the bishop for the knight certainly makes up for it, at least semi, in a lot of ways, as now we're seeing the aggression come through. Rook E7 gets played, traded out, as it is going to be pressure onto the H pawn from black. I don't know if I like that, because now if you're white, you get the option to play some crazy moves here, such as rook to B7, followed up by knight to E7. If you can find a weird way to be able to find a checkmate there, it could cause a lot of problems, but instead they just push up C4, which is probably the best way to make this game go your way.
Yeah, I was going to say, I like the idea of exchanges. It would be in very Caden fashion as well, willing to trade pieces as long as like a +1, +2 in material. Right now, you're only sitting at a +1, but this is a much more, I want to say, conservative answer and a conservative play. You're actually saying, okay, I need to net myself a better position because the right side is so undefined right now. Massive move in, though, as you lock that bishop in for battle. And I think Person got a little bit too hectic because you're going to lose your bishop either way. What happened? Oh, Kankakee, you unfortunately have given yourself such a weird position to be in, and you had to break away, as now there's a possible fork as well. Oh, things have gone disastrously as it's all kind of breaking apart.
Oh, as we are going to be looking, it's a +1 advantage still, as the trade does come in.
You can't move that rook.
Just do it.
Please don't move that rook. I'm looking at Person. Just don't move that rook, my dude.
It's rough. It's rough.
Yeah.
I mean, it does seem as if this game is going to be cut and dry. Maybe you play H6 to be able to get a little bit of leeway for your rook, but oh, this is bad. I don't know if I like that move either. Rook
Nope.
E8, on paper it looks okay, but at the
Wait,
same
no!
time, of course... No, that's still fine because they're just looking for the trade. They're gonna take on C8 and then knight over to E7, and it'll be completely good in their ways. As now you have to take if you're black, as if not, you're gonna get checkmated unless you play King 8, but King F8 might not be the best either, as that still limits your potential. And then white's just going to take your rook, and they're gonna be up a whole knight, and it's just gonna be looking bad overall.
I still think that was mate in 2, right? Or
Oh,
mate
for
in
what?
3. There was mate in 3. So if you kept white rook on C7, you push knight to E7, and you force a check. Oh, I guess you don't have to take. I guess that's on my end. I guess.
You just push up with the king over to F8.
I see what you're saying.
And I think that would be okay because at that point you still just get the trade. But this is even worse now.
that is 100% true. 100% true. 100% true.
Or no, I just look at this as kind of like, if you're black, the best way to win this, in my personal opinion, you got to push those 3 pawns on the right. If you don't push those pawns, this game's over. Or you just wait for your opponent to blunder. That's also a thing. We've seen Person having some good ideas, and they've been able to find draws before, and that certainly is something that they can look towards, as there is going to be this. Yeah, they're just going to push up. I don't know how. Okay. I think there is definitely the possibility for a draw. It's just going to be very, very unlikely.
Yeah, and I like this. You went ahead and saw the two pawn push up. Now you're going to see that force, and it's going to be an exchange of pawns over on that end, maybe. There is a way out, depending if you're talking about blunders. If you're wondering about the blunder set, now it's going to be an angle. Yep, you go ahead, push up. It's going to be a full pawn enforcement. Are you going to try and push that F pawn up? Yeah, and you actually force the knight to move, get a little bit more space granted. Good body block there.
What? Say you get the pawn to F3. They have to take. Oh, as soon as they take,
it's still changed though, right? Yeah, it's still changed by the knight.
There's nothing they can do.
Oh, dang.
That's unfortunate. I mean, maybe...
It was a good idea. It was a very good idea. It was a good attempt for what it was.
Yes.
All right, let's see if Kanan doesn't fumble this. I hate saying it. I feel like that game 1 should have been theirs with the 3 pawn push. This one feels like you're going to try and bank out that king as much as possible. You're going to extend over into the D side instead of looking for that B4 pawn in exchange. So looking to cover all of your current pieces, as the right side is currently locked up.
Yeah, it is rough when you're in that situation where you lose a winning position, end it in a tie, and I can't say that I've never felt that. I mean, I actually felt that at a World Championship one time, at the World Open in Philadelphia, and I accidentally, yeah, it was not good. It was not good at all, Orbital, let me tell you.
What round were you in?
It was like, I think round 6 or something, and I just kind of like blundered a really good position and then was only having 1 pawn on the very edge of the board, and it kind of left me in a bad spot, and I was drained. Unlike this Caden over here, who's having a very good performance after doing the exact same thing. So now there's going to be this 1 king left on the side. Pawn's going to be stuck, so if they get the draw, it is going to be forced, as it doesn't seem too possible. Now you can play king to D7, and that will instantly neutralize any ways to get around. But they are just going to do it in the end, as they kind of took their time, baited a little bit, and now that will do it. As Person, how will you get out of this one?
A lot of hopes and prayers. Considering what happened in game 1, it's a lot of hopes and prayers, but I do see that Kanan has shored up their defenses in a much faster game. 4 minutes on the time bank for Person. I like that Kanan offered into this, I'm going to make it bloody, and that is your weakness. Well played by Kanan of LaVille High School to go up 4-0 in their series score. It was well played overall. Person from Kankakee Valley High School has unfortunately fallen here, still sitting at a very high series score of 3-1, which is solid overall. Very, very solid.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in the season, there was only 4 players who were still at that 3 wins record, and then one of them also had a loss already. So at this point, Kaden and Person, both in the top 3 individuals. And at this point, now Kaden looking to be poised at the #1 spot unless Snaz DPX is going to be able to steal that away from them. I mean, it definitely seems as if both players really had this coming at some point rather than kind of going out in a little bit of a dumpster fire. They took it to a blaze of glory as they were able to find a draw in game 1, looking competitive. Unfortunately, towards the end there, it did get a little bit out of control, but you gotta give it for sure up for person to be able to take that elo differential. Like, we had kind of seen that, right? You had mentioned it earlier where it was a 1,000 rated player against a 2,000 rated player. And still, despite the differential between their elos, it looked like it was pretty even Stevens throughout the entire series.
It really, really was, and that's what made it so thrilling to watch the entirety high school scholastic seasons on the line and playing a level of chess that I can never do so, and that's what's thrilling about it overall, and I had a blast. Hopefully you did too, Cherry, and if you liked a lot of it, for the viewers at home, we want to give a big shout out to those that have made it possible. You heard about Zotac earlier, but also LANFest. LANFest is a huge part of the broadcast here with their LANFest Scholastic Esports program, a program that supports this league and many others. Since launching, LANFest has delivered over 300 broadcasts to Scholastic leagues in Washington and Indiana. We provide these broadcasts, LANFest provides these broadcasts free of charge to the league, schools, and teams covered. Generous donations are also amazing if you want to continue seeing all this action from the Scholastic side. And again, for every $200 raised, it covers the operating costs for one regular season broadcast. Of course, if you appreciate all the work that LANFest puts into this, please go ahead and donate whatever you wish, or also your time. We appreciate every little bit. Not only that, for players that are looking to take their level from the Scholastic to the collegiate, there is LOS Portal or League OS Portal. For those that are hoping to enter into sports or esports in any other form, you can go ahead and start building out your own player profile, and of course look for hundreds of collegiate esports programs at portal.leagueos.gg. Scholarships exist for players, shoutcasters, and more, so list all of your talents, and also look for verified college coaches that are also searching LOS Portal now for you. Sign in to manage your prospect profile, where your stats are automatically updated if you're an IHSEN student, and of course LOS Portal is also free. Do not miss your chance to be discovered and show off your own skills moving into the 2026-2027 year as well. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in. I know that was a lot to talk about at the very end. Hopefully you enjoyed Caden from LaVille High School keeping their undefeated streak alive, and hopefully you enjoyed our voices. My name is Orbital. With me has been Cherry J. We had the ever so fantastic Connie, as well as, I believe, a Mobug on the production side. And we'll see you all next time for some more Indiana esports action.